On the 4th of February, the U.S. Air Force shot down what was suspected to be a Chinese surveillance spy balloon, equipped with the latest electronic surveillance technology, capable of monitoring secretive communication. But this venture has some serious complications for U.S.-Sino relations, something that could potentially change the course of history forever. But before we step into it, we want to take you back to why the U.S.-Sino debacle is more than a mere controversy. To put things into perspective, the relationship between the United States and China is one of the most important and complex bilateral relationships in the world today. As most of you would probably already know, it is characterized by both cooperation and competition, and sometimes beyond that, with both countries seeking to advance their own interests while also finding ways to work together on global issues. This relationship has turned into a rivalry, the one that has redefined the world order forever. In recent years, the relationship has been strained by a number of factors, including trade tensions, disagreement over intellectual property rights, competition in technology and innovation, and differences in approaches to human rights and governance. The U.S.-China relationship is also influenced by broader geopolitical dynamics, such as the changing balance of power in the Indo-Pacific region and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these challenges, the two countries have continued to engage in diplomatic and economic exchanges, with the goal of finding ways to manage their differences and advance shared interests. At the same time, the relationship is being closely watched by the international community, given the significant implications it has for global peace, security, and prosperity. Now make sure you press the like button, and if you do like watching videos related to the changing world order and everything going around, make sure you press that subscribe button as well. But the strain was taken to a whole new level when a Chinese spy balloon was downed by the U.S. Air Force Thunderjet. On January the 28th, a balloon was spotted entering the Alaskan airspace. The balloon hovered around for a while and had a brief tour over the Canadian airspace before returning and breaching the American airspace. Now you guys might be thinking that it was just a balloon. How could it possibly be a threat? Let us show you something. The hovering balloon was not an ordinary one, perhaps a spy balloon. Spy balloons, also known as surveillance balloons or stratospheric balloons, are used for aerial surveillance and intelligence gathering. These balloons are equipped with cameras, sensors, and other monitoring equipment that are designed to fly at high altitudes, where they can remain aloft for extended periods of time. The data and images collected by these balloons can be used for a variety of purposes, including monitoring the movements of military forces, keeping track of natural disasters and environmental changes, and gathering information for scientific research. Some military and intelligence agencies also use spy balloons for border patrol, border security, and reconnaissance missions. When we take a look at the history, Israel has used spy balloons to monitor activity in the Gaza Strip and along its borders with Lebanon and Syria. Similarly, the UK has used spy balloons for surveillance in Iraq and Afghanistan. France has used spy balloons for surveillance in Mali and other African countries. India has used spy balloons for surveillance along its borders with Pakistan and China. Now, this particular spy balloon was not an ordinary one. The shockwaves came when the U.S. authorities discovered that the object was a Chinese surveillance spy balloon capable of gathering secretive information. But what makes this particular spy balloon interesting is the extent of tension it has generated. And the million-dollar question is, what will be the response from Beijing? The balloon was enormous, nearly 200 feet tall. It appeared to have been floating over one of the country's 3 nuclear missile silo fields in Montana, and such balloons can capture communication signals that satellites cannot. The U.S. claims the balloon was on an intelligence-gathering mission, traveling over a number of sensitive military sites, including missile silos. China claims the balloon was for meteorological observation and had simply blown off course. On the other hand, U.S. officials say similar balloons flew over the U.S. at least 3 times during Donald Trump's presidency and once earlier in Joe Biden's, but this flight was the longest in duration, and it is the first time details have been made public. The blame game can go on for over a century, but this isn't the first time the U.S. and China have had to work through a high-stakes controversy, and not even the first time aerial surveillance has been involved. In 2001, a U.S. surveillance plane collided with a Chinese fighter jet near the Chinese island of Hainan, an incident that led to high-stakes diplomacy after the U.S. crew made an emergency landing on Hainan and was detained. In the case of the balloon, both countries took initial steps to keep the situation from escalating. For days, the U.S. said nothing about the balloon's existence. Blinken and other U.S. officials met with Chinese diplomats to discuss the issue. After the story broke, the Chinese government said the balloon was a civilian weather airship that had been blown off course, and then took the rare step of expressing regret over the situation. The critical juncture came with the cancellation of the trip to China by Anthony Blinken. Taking this sign as offensive, China has termed the shooting as an overreaction and something that was done without rationality. But what lies in the future might be critical for the geopolitical landscape. If it was a spy balloon, what information was it collecting? Why, having tracked it for days, did the Pentagon go public when it did? And how common is balloon espionage, a practice that dates back centuries? As for the US-China relationship, was it necessary to cancel the Blinken trip? These are some questions that require immediate answers, but what happens in the future remains a crucial point of the US-China relationship. Now, if a balloon can disrupt talks, especially diplomatic visits, it doesn't bode well for progress on more contentious issues, such as trade or Taiwan. Surveillance flights have long been a sore point in the US-China relationship, but usually from the reverse perspective. China vociferously objects to US military surveillance flights near Chinese territory, albeit outside its formal airspace. Let's not forget when in late December 2022, the US military released rare footage showing a Chinese J-11 fighter conducting an unsafe intercept of a US Air Force reconnaissance plane over the South China Sea. The US military claimed its plane had to take evasive maneuvers to avoid a collision. In a firm response, China called out the US for frequently deploying aircraft and vessels for close-in reconnaissance on China, which poses a grave threat to Chinese national sovereignty. Whether the two countries will continue to call each other out or their evasive measures will be apparent in the future. But with Anthony Blinken calling off his visit, this might give the already straining relationship a new dimension. The timing of the surveillance balloon incident is especially curious, given widespread reports that U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is due to visit China. Now, it would be his first trip to the country since assuming office in January 2021, and the first visit by a U.S. Secretary of State since 2018. This visit was of utmost importance for both nations. According to reports, the visit was meant to revamp relations on trade and the Taiwan issue. The downing of the Chinese surveillance spy balloon has wavered the hopes of a better geopolitical relationship between the two superpowers. Looking at another angle, what if China comes up with a response of its own? What if this incident sparks a new front for another Cold War on a larger scale? So what do you think about the downing of the Chinese spy balloon? Will it lead to another geopolitical shift in the world order, or will the two nations resolve it over the table? The answers lie in the future, but make sure you leave your views in the comments section below. Press that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you guys in the next video.